Hey everyone, welcome back to The Gap. This is Hussain. Today in the podcast, we have a guest with us who I was very excited to interview, and I was looking forward to talk to her for quite a while now. Uh, Having a multi-talented person is always very engaging conversation-wise because it gives us a lot of stuff to talk about. But she is living a multifaceted life in the truest sense. She is a doctorate in sustainability, and she is also an educator teaching younger minds about sustainability. But that is just one part of her personality. On the flip side, she is also an RJ, podcast host, and most recently, she is the author of Moonsmith, that is a commentary on the works of Gulzar Sahab in India. Now, just to give a disclaimer to all the viewers listening, throughout this conversation, we might flow in and out of Urdu, क्योंकि बात जब गुलजार साहब के काम की हो और उसकी गुफ्तगू उर्दू में ना की जाए तो ये थोड़ी ज़्यादती होगी. So, I welcome to the podcast Miss Dr. Shailja Chandra.
Thank you so much. Shukriya, Hussain. It's a pleasure to be here.
No, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for joining us. So just before we get into the conversation, I'd ask all of our viewers to kindly take a second out of your time and hit that subscribe button. Also give us some feedback on conversations that we've had so far and also this conversation. If you find it engaging, share it with your friends, share it with your family, and also give us some feedback or suggestions on the kind of guests that you would want on this show. We'll try to get that arranged as soon as possible. So let's dive right in. So normally the format that I take with these conversations is I normally take it step by step with a person's life, because as In the Gap is focused on the journey of immigrants, both personal and professional. So that is the angle that we want to understand. We're going to talk about your achievements and your professional side, your writing and all of that. But more than that, what we are primarily trying to do is understand you as a person. So I ask you to take us right back to the start, your childhood, your upbringing up to your graduation in India.
Oh, that back. Okay, so I come from this northern part of India, from Dehradun, Roorkee, that region, now Uttarakhand. And that's where Dehradun and nearby areas, that's where my childhood was, most of it. Schooling, conventional, aspiring student want to be at the top of the game, which was generally, a small class. But I think there was an element in me which wanted to do my best, and I always feel that hard wiring hasn't served me well. But that's for a later talk. But I was a good student throughout my life, and that also meant that I tried to do the best to get into the engineering colleges and managed to be where I was for 5 years, which is University of Roorkee, now IIT. Which was quite a transformative experience, actually, being away from home and just creating our own little world there.
Yeah, of course.
A lot of shenanigans, but also very, very hard work doing architecture, which is always a longer degree than many other engineering degrees. So that was quite transformative. And I think that was the first time when I realized that not everything will be served on a platter for me, that I'll have to really work hard to be a sort of recognized architect and to make money and pay my bills doing architecture. Before that, I used to think, it's going to be as easy as getting, your first class sort of ranking.
Yeah.
But uske baad, the journey was harder than the 5-year uni to do training in Delhi, move to Delhi away from family. Again, wahan pe some of the girls will share the apartment. We had a great time as well, watching some of the great 90s movies and living this independent life. And then I got married. I met my husband in the uni as well. Both of us did architecture. So both of us were tied to this one profession, and we didn't realize that diversifying was so important, especially when the construction slump will hit us in the late 90s.
Okay. Right.
And that's when we realized that one of us should probably look at doing something else. And that's when my husband moved into IT. I continued doing architecture. And both of us decided that if I have to pursue something in architecture more seriously, why not, look at studying further? That's when we looked at Australia as an opportunity to study further, to look into sustainability, which has always been a passion, and just explore this unaccustomed earth. So we moved in 2000, and it was a golden time for IT.
It was.
So coming from construction slump, a bad time for construction to a good time in IT, that worked well for us.
And even early 2000s when you came into Australia, that was where the actual construction boom started for Australia as well.
Yes, okay. I wasn't really working at that time because I was studying, trying to find our feet. But my husband finding a full-time job fairly recently after we moved to Australia really helped us. And I think we fell in love with Australia pretty quickly. We were living very close to University of New South Wales, and I used to walk every day, and I just fell in love with the blue skies and the flora and fauna and the traffic and everything really. And we thought, okay, this is home. We want to stay back.
It's a difficult city not to love.
True, very well said. It is, Sydney. You cannot not love.
there's a very vibrant community. There's a like even within arts and culture, there's a huge scene there.
Absolutely.
So it's a really nice
Melbourneians will not agree with you.
Melbourneians would not agree with me, but Sydney has its own.
It is iconic.
Sydney is iconic, and Sydney has its own fast-paced charm, if you will.
True. Yeah. For those who are looking for fast-paced life, definitely it has a charm. And I have lived in Melbourne as well, by the way, for 2 years.
Okay.
And
you're
my
the
heart,
right authority to give
my
a verdict
heart
on
just
that.
longed to come back because of the iconic aspects of it. There was nothing in Melbourne that was as iconic as Opera House or the Harbour Bridge or the beaches.
Of course.
There's not a lot of beaches, but I loved Melbourne for the buzz that it had, for the planning, and for the the bohemian look and
yes, bohemian is the right word.
Yeah, and if you have to call a city the food capital, it was Melbourne. The fashion capital was Melbourne. The sports capital was Melbourne. The literary capital was so that way it had life and class, but Sydney is different, beautiful in different ways. So that's how it all started. I did my PhD soon. We were citizens and deep in the corporate world, both of us very busy with our lives and making, progress on that front.
Yeah.
But I think a point comes when you question all of that. And I think for all of us, that point will hit at one point.
Yes.
I don't know when that will happen. But for all of us, that seeking will happen. I think for me, that happened in 2014. But there's a little element in 2012 also, which was a sort of trigger point, was meeting Gulzar Saab that year, which was for my radio interview.
Before we get to Gulzar Saab, there are a few things that I would want to touch on.
Yes.
So that question about having that purpose that you just talked about, I feel that that comes... my question is that did you get into architecture or engineering as a choice, or was it because coming from South Asia, doctor, engineer, lawyer, those are your three choices. Pick whatever you want. So were you more of that, or was it more of a choice?
So I would say that there was a little bit of conditioning that I have to be doctor or an engineer or all that. But I do remember distinctly that when I was preparing for IIT, when I was surrounded by lots of books and thick books and all that, at one point it really inspired me to solve difficult physics, chemistry, mathematics problems.
Right.
And I remember being awake in the entire house at 3 a.m. and having this eureka moment. Oh, mujhe samajh aa gaya ye. And, and I can now solve it. And when I did my IIT exam, I remember having this really inspired, sort of feeling through the entire day. Physics, chemistry, math, sare paper ho rahe hain. And I'm like, I didn't think I was going to get into IIT. So I had no pressures.
Yeah.
I remember there was a friend of mine, hum log dono saath mein coaching jate the, and she said, I'm not going to even attempt other engineering. I'm only going to give IIT because I'm not interested. Right. And I had no such hang-ups. I was like, main ja rahi hu, aaram se, when I came out of the examination hall, I went to visit my chemistry teacher, maths teacher, and I was sharing with them so excitedly. I'm like, this is how I saw it. He said, yeah, this makes sense. I couldn't believe that, something that was such a big thing. It was a big deal. IIT questions आते थे ना, पीछे होते थे books के. मुझे लगता था मैं इनको कभी देख भी नहीं सकती. But one day to be able to solve those, I can never forget, that sense of accomplishment was something else.
Yeah, of course.
But unlucky for that friend, she didn't get through and I got through. And I think when you tie something with, accomplishment or achievement, the whole pleasure goes away. But because this moment I wasn't thinking I need to go into IIT, I had fun.
A lot of times it's also the thrill of the hunt.
Yeah.
When you're after something, as soon as you get it, uski intrinsic value थोड़ी सी
कम हो जाती है. True. So
you got to that point. I asked that because I recently have found myself thinking about this as well, that okay, you did do your qualification, you did get into engineering, and you have a career and everything, but there has to be something more.
Okay, so the moment for you has arrived. Okay, so
I'd say the moment
here at the right time.
I'd say the moment is ongoing.
Yes, it's not a sharp and sweet moment. Yeah,
it's just that, and I think that is the way we grow. Yeah. If we constantly keep asking ourselves that, okay, what next? What do I do? What's my you keep looking for that
purpose.
Ethereal purpose, that defines you. I guess everybody's looking for that. So for you, at that point, now bringing Gulzar Sahab into that mix. Okay, you're in Sydney. You've built a career for yourself. You and your husband, you've worked hard. You've built a life for yourself, home, family. You're settled. You're a citizen of Australia. And then the question hits you that, okay, I want to do something else. This might not be my purpose, right? So how Gulzar Sahab? Because I understand कि Gulzar Sahab की शायरी और उनके गाने और उनके, I mean, he's a legend. It goes without saying. But his work must have had some very deep and profound impact on you growing up or during your early life.
Absolutely.
That you decided to dedicate a huge chunk of your life to his work.
Yeah, so I think all of us grew up listening to him. Yeah, and when I say that, I'm only referring to his songs.
His songs.
तो मेरा इंट्रोडक्शन भी गुलजार साहब का सॉन्ग्स के थ्रू ही था. और हमेशा मुझे लगता था कि वो अलग से शाइन करते थे.
for sure.
राइट, तो वो सबके साथ ही शायद वो एक्सपीरियंस हुआ हो. पर मुझे एक डिस्टिंक्ट मोमेंट याद है जब मैं यूनिवर्सिटी में थी. उसके बारे में मैंने अपनी बुक में भी लिखा है और एक आर्टिकल भी पूरा छपा, जिसमें कि just a boring afternoon when we have to just quickly finish lunch and attend a class at 3 p.m. or something. So वो afternoon slumber होता है ना, and रेडियो पे तब विविध भारती ही आता था. विविध भारती पे गाना चल रहा था, तेरे बिना जिंदगी से कोई शिकवा तो नहीं. And I was just looking out into the courtyard. बीच में एक courtyard होता था, चारों तरफ 3 story हमारा hostel था. और I think it was raining that afternoon. और I just remember looking out and I just remember this, intense pain or intense sense of longing, listening to his words.
Okay.
And I'm thinking, no, nothing, that I'm longing for in life. There's no person I'm longing for. There's,
it's an undefined longing.
Yeah, undefined longing that was there dormant somewhere.
Yes. Okay.
And that song, it just, made it alive and it's there, with its own heartbeat. I'm thinking, what is this? I can never forget that moment. I'm thinking, there's something that moves you. There's a part of your emotionality that's just always dormant.
Yep.
So all the range of emotions are always within us.
Yes.
Right? And at different point in life, they just come alive. So that was the moment when a sense of longing came alive within me without having experienced longing firsthand. So that stayed with me. And of course, uske baad busy वापस university काम वाम ये सब. But I was always in love with Gulzar before that, after that, in that moment. तो वो कभी गया नहीं दिल से. लेकिन रेडियो जब मैंने शुरू किया यहाँ पर, this was 2008 or something.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, the day when I felt that I need to do something like this was also related to Gulzar Saab. It was around, 7 p.m. So the radio show that I do used to be from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. During the times when I used to be a listener.
Okay.
So I'm just listening at home and I think it was 6 to 7 वाला time होगा, बाहर अंधेरा था.
Yeah.
And I remember distinctly the song was दिल ढूंढता है फिर वही वाला गाना चल रहा था. And I felt, and I didn't ever vocalize it. I thought, oh, I want to do this. I want to play songs like these for others. That was my only.
Touch people.
Yeah, that touch people. And that's it. I never thought anything more of that.
Right.
And so it's another story how I got into radio and what happened. And I remember, the first song I ever played was Kahin Ek Masoom Nazuk Si Ladki Bahut Khoobsurat Magar Sanvali Si. I don't know if you heard that song.
No, I haven't.
Beautiful song, Khayyam ka music hai, and Rafi ka gana hai. And I played the song, and somebody called saying, this is my most favorite song, and I haven't heard it in ages. Thank you so much for playing this song. And I'm like, okay,
And
the
that's
dream,
it, that's it. That
yeah,
is the
I was
moment
like,
of validation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And also the moment where something I had thought कि मुझे यार गाने ऐसे सुनाने हैं जो लोगों को touch करे, that just came true in that moment.
Yes.
So we had a good session, and then from there, Vikram Sharma, unka naam hai hamara producer, he could see that I could probably bring something, a different voice to the radio.
Yeah.
That's how it all started.
Interesting. And at this time, you were still working in sustainability.
Yes. I was very, very busy at that time, actually. This was like, I had moved back from Melbourne, and I was setting up a new team in sustainable buildings during that time. So that was the year when we came back. And I was setting up a new team in Sydney office and all that. So I was at the peak of, that corporate career. But yeah.
While we're on that, while you are at the peak of your corporate career, so just very quickly, I would want to understand, okay, your doctorate in sustainability.
Yes.
That focuses on sustainable housing?
Sustainable buildings. So and infrastructure. It doesn't have to be housing. It could be commercial buildings, retail,
High-rises.
Industrial, any types of buildings. So it could be cities, infrastructure.
So at that time, what were the kind of projects that you were working on?
Okay, so my background is architecture, and I did my PhD in sustainable buildings. So my main role was to work with architects to convert the designs that they were already going to design into something that's going to be more sustainable, resource efficient, energy efficient, water efficient, waste efficient, and all that. So I did a lot of work in the space of defense, a lot of defense projects we used to work. Healthcare and hospitals was our sort of, area of expertise.
Yep.
When I say ours, the companies. So for us, New South Wales Health was an important client. So I remember working, for example, with the Chris O'Brien, the Lifehouse Centre in University of Sydney, and trying to convert that into, a world-class hospital facility to also a sustainable 5-star, Green Star, rated building. Yep. So if you're aware of ratings and all that, that's what I do.
Okay.
But also a lot of compliance work when we look at, for example, Building Code of Australia requires all the new residential and buildings to be rated.
Right.
Matters rating. So that's what we do. We basically,
you guys provide the rating.
We look at the design and we provide design suggestions so that we can meet the rating requirement.
Sure.
So that's the kind of things we do. But going back to your question, we did a lot of university, laboratory buildings. We also worked, me and my team worked with even other departments in the company, renewable energy, environment and planning group, mining. So, we had our hands and web all around the company.
And within the same field, you are still an educator?
So at that time, I wasn't educating. I was just a consultant. And I said just a consultant means not having any time to do anything else. And then education started after I resigned from that work to write the book full time for 2 years.
Okay.
And then after 2 years, when the draft was ready, I thought, okay, now I can go back to doing some work as well as polishing the draft.
Yep.
So that's when I looked at, doing some part-time work, some part-time teaching, and that's where I am now. So I've been teaching at TAFE at Sydney Uni, and just last week I've joined Western Sydney Uni and teaching sustainability.
Western Sydney Uni in Parramatta?
And Kingswood and Parramatta.
Okay, so you're traveling between the campuses. Okay.
I have to start tomorrow.
Oh, interesting.
So
Congratulations. Best of luck for that.
Thank you.
Okay, interesting. Right. So we are back at that evening where you heard that song
Yeah.
and it ignited something within you that you want to share these songs with people, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so is that also where you got the idea for working on Gulzar Saab's work?
No, not at all. So this was 2007, 8 probably, when I had that, moment, light bulb moment. So 2012 is when I met Gulzar Saab for an
Okay.
interview for the radio.
And that must have been a huge deal for you.
Oh, the only deal for me.
That- I mean-
Because I was going to India and I said to Vikramji, who was the producer, I said to him, look, I really don't have any longing to meet anyone. I will be going to Mumbai. No other name comes to my mind but Gulzar
Gulzar
Saab.
Saab.
I said, Vikramji, this is, the sentence that goes in the book also. I said, Vikramji, मैं मरूंगी नहीं जब तक गुलजार साहब से एक बार ना मिल लूं. So he said, okay, मैं करता हूँ कुछ.
Right.
And then वो होता है ना एक seed आप किसी के दिमाग में डाल के, then I was on my way to India. I forgot about it totally. I'm like, नहीं होगा देखते हैं. इंडिया में एक दिन उनका फ़ोन आया, दिवाली का टाइम था, तो हैप्पी दिवाली के लिए हमने हैप्पी दिवाली किया दोनों ने. एंड देन ही सेड, हाँ मैं आपकी बात भूला नहीं हूँ, आई एम वर्किंग ऑन इट. हम लाइक, कौन सी बात? ओह अच्छा, मैंने कुछ कहा था. बट आई डिडंट थिंक मच ऑफ इट अगेन. एंड देन वन डे ऑल ऑफ अस, मी एंड माई ब्रदर इन लॉ, सिस्टर इन लॉ, माई हस्बैंड, हम सब लोग आगरा वगैरह का प्लान किया दिल्ली से. आगरा, फतेहपुर सीकरी, यहाँ घूमने निकले हुए थे.
Right.
And I still have, evidence of me being on phone as we are on in Fatehpur Sikri, because the call came, and Vikramji said कि आपका interview fix हो रहा है कल के लिए. I'm like, it can't be true because
And you just have one day to prepare, one evening.
yeah, and it's a fair point because one would prepare for the only life event that they're hoping for, right?
Exactly.
But I didn't. I'm like, ये होना थोड़ा ना, ये तो मैंने ऐसे ही कह दिया, यूनिवर्स को कह दिया,
Right.
but ये होगा नहीं. So I had zero preparation.
Right. Okay.
और मैं फतेहपुर सीकरी में हूँ. ये 5-6 बजे की बात है शाम को. मुझे सुबह 10-11 बजे मुंबई में होना है.
Okay.
To be, face to face with गुलजार साहब.
Right.
हम लोग 12 बजे करीब घर पहुँचे होंगे, विच इज़ दिल्ली. ड्राइव करके, ट्रैफिक बहुत बुरा था. और 1 बजे खाना वाना खा के मैंने रियलाइज़ किया कि मुझे अब प्रिपरेशन करनी चाहिए. एंड आई थिंक वी हैड टू लीव द होटल एट अराउंड 3 o'clock in the morning.
Spoken like a true engineer. के बिल्कुल जब कल फाइनल एग्जाम है ना, अब तैयारी कर लेनी
And
चाहिए.
I don't work that way, to be honest. मैं वो वाली ट्रू इंजीनियर नहीं हूँ. मैं लास्ट मिनट के लिए कुछ नहीं छोड़ती हूँ, बट यहाँ पे ऐसा हो गया.
Right.
तो anyway, I literally had 1 hour of sleep and 1 hour of prep. But I think जब मुझे सुराग हाथ लगा that this is the angle I'm going to take for the interview, that's it. I didn't do a lot more preparation. वो सही angle पकड़ में आ गया था. But I did watch a lot of stuff leading up to it. And yeah, so I was ready. थोड़ा बहुत plane में भी preparation रही. So yeah, it was quite interesting. The whole journey was quite interesting. हम लोग almost गलत terminal पे पहुँचते हुए almost plane miss करते कराते पहुँचे हैं.
Right.
I was via Bhopal, but we were there timely. And 11 o'clock, the world changed for me. My life changed. 22nd of November 2012, 11 a.m. India time. So that interview, which was set for 1 hour, we didn't want to stop, and I have a recording of 72 minutes, and that had to be stopped because Shan, the singer, and Shantanu Moitra, the music director, walked in. That was Gulzar Saab's next meeting. So he said, Beta, ab aa gaye hain ye log, to let's wrap up.
Okay.
So I didn't think much of it in the sense that वो interview कहाँ जाएगा, कैसे receive होगा. All I wanted was to share that interview on the radio. On radio, we got phenomenal response. There was, a call that I was driving on the highway and I had to park at the shoulder because I couldn't go on.
Yeah.
There was so much to listen to. I couldn't drive and pay full attention to the interview. So I had to stop. So, it was really, really amazing. And it connected me to people who I had never even known, like Pavan Jha ji, who actually runs Gulzar Saab's social media. And, he's an authority on Gulzar Saab, but not just Gulzar Saab. He's an authority on film, music, films, and is an archivalist as well, film historian. उनका एक ग्रुप होता था फेसबुक पर जिससे मैं कनेक्टेड नहीं थी. बट मेरे इंटरव्यू से मैं अशोक बिंदल जी से जुड़ी, जो कि गुलजार साहब के फ्रेंड और क्लोज एसोसिएट हैं. उन्होंने मुझे मैसेज डाला कि आपका इंटरव्यू बहुत अच्छा लगा, और अभी मैं गुलजार साहब के साथ था तो बात हो रही थी कि ये ही थॉट दैट दिस इज़ वन ऑफ द नॉट बेस्ट बट वेरी डिफरेंट इंटरव्यू. ही सेड जो मुझसे पूछने आते हैं क्वेश्चन वो यही पूछते हैं कि आप के सफ़ेद कपड़े और आपके जूते या फिल्मों की बात करेंगे. बट माई फोकस वॉज टोटली ऑन हिज लिटरेचर, ऑन लाइफ, एंड he mentioned that at that quorum talk as well.
I noticed that as well, because he mentioned that ज़्यादातर लोग जो उनसे सवाल पूछते हैं, they only touch the surface of what you can touch on a person's life, right?
Yes.
But you actually went in deeper to peel back those words and understand the emotion behind them and what compelled him to actually like write that. Like what you tried to trail the thread of that thought, of where that thought is coming from.
Yeah, and I think it's unfair to any writer to say कि आप बताइए आप क्या सोच रहे थे या क्या कर रहे थे. And I'm sure Gulzar Saab won't be able to say that this is exactly what I was thinking, this was the mood, this was the day when I wrote this.
Because it doesn't work like that.
It doesn't work like that. So but the whole point is that to be able to investigate with that curiosity opens up new vantage points.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point. This book is the Moonsmith Gulzar orbiting the celebrated words. So, so you know, I can see that
orbiting is the key word.
Is the key word. So
orbiting is the key word.
So I think that orbiting, that curiosity was always there when I interviewed him as well. So yeah, so that's how when we had that interview, 1 hour interview, I divided it into 12 segments. And a lot of those questions of life also appeared in that interview. And I think that was the seed of this book. That interview, that day, 22nd of November, 2012, is when I, went into this path.
Yes.
And I think when I came back, when I got this amazing feedback, and also having, this unsatisfactory corporate life, it all sort of culminated into the point where you're like, okay, what's my purpose? Okay, this is
I can imagine, like, for you to have such a profound experience with a hero of yours.
Yes.
And
that will truly transform your path, right?
And having all of that high, riding that high of having that interview done and meeting Gulzar Saab and trying to explore his work, and then coming back to your job at 9 to 5.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Although, I'll tell you a distinct moment in my life after 2012 is when I used to go to work, I felt more enriched to be able to do the exact same work.
Yes.
Because I'd had such amazing, enriching experience. I had broadened my horizons.
Okay.
So when I went back to my desk, the same desk, I felt a lot more enriched and a lot more inspired to do the same job. So don't get me wrong. Like, it wasn't the job that, that I wanted to just resign because it was not fulfilling, because sustainability by itself was very inspiring to work
for
on.
sure. It's a very noble thing to work in.
Yeah, it did. But I think, just the pressure of workload, and just having your weekends, and that was the only time when I could sit down and start working on the book. And I'm like, nah, it's not going to work.
You'll have to give more.
I'll have to give more. I have to give my full. And so I applied for a 1-year leave, which didn't get approved. So that was my only choice.
Okay, interesting. So walk me through the moment you made that decision. You must have had this conversation with your husband. Did he understand?
Absolutely.
Was he able to meet you on that
supportive.
On that frequency?
He probably was the one who inspired me to take that plunge.
Wow.
And I also remember a couple of other colleagues, and one of them distinctly, because we recently touched base when my book came out. She said, I remember all these, numerous conversations with you. Yvonne is her name. And we used to go out for coffee, and I'll talk to her, and she would say, go for it, Shailja. And she was, a great inspiration as well.
Yeah.
So, but I think that moment, nobody can push you to do something like that. वो अंदर से ही एक बहुत strong voice या पुकार आती है, और वो आई होगी जब मुझे लगा कि ये मैं वापस इस पे आ सकती हूँ. Like I had amazing support from my colleagues and great reputation in the company. So I thought that I could always walk back into this role.
For me personally, I felt through my experience, I believe in manifestation. So if you think of something, and if you start speaking about it enough,
in detail,
it materializes. And
I've heard that too. I mean, I haven't been able to manifest everything that I want to manifest, but I think the classic would be with Gulzar Saab, meeting him.
Yeah.
was purely my manifestation.
Yeah.
So that definitely got manifested, but probably not everything can get manifested, and
Yeah.
I think that's the human condition,
Yeah.
which we can talk about another
Yeah.
day, and we have to accept that too.
Yeah. I was talking in context of this podcast that I'm running.
Yes.
Like,
Okay.
being an engineer, this is a completely new environment for myself as well.
Right,
But
right.
this is more of like a passion project for me.
Yes.
But this again was the idea. The seed for this idea was planted back in 2020.
Okay.
Like 3 years ago. I was like, okay, I want to do something. I want
Right.
to do something, but I want to talk about something that would be meaningful. कि कोई सामने वाला सुन रहा है तो उसको कुछ meaningful तो मिलेगा ना. So that is, I started simmering the idea inside of me, and then it became real for me. It materialized when I started telling people that I'm thinking about doing this.
Right.
And when you start telling
verbalizing
people,
it.
yeah, when you start verbalizing it, then दो चीज़ें होती हैं. एक तो आपको एक validation भी मिलती है दूसरों से कि I told this idea to a couple of people and they gave me some positive feedback that yeah, there is a gap in the market for something like this. Yeah, you can do something like this, like nobody else is doing something like this. Or simply for the sake of having conversations like these,
Yeah.
or conversations that would otherwise not happen
Yes.
if you don't have them.
Yeah.
And that gives you some validation. And
The world is not missing anything if you don't do this
you don't do it,
conversation.
you know?
But then you get a lot out of these conversations once you do it.
So that is how manifestation worked for me once I started verbalizing it.
Yeah, I think verbalizing works on that level, but also, I think, you start to feel कि आप बात कह दी है तो
अब करना भी है. Yeah, interesting. Okay, so the book is obviously out there, and आपने obviously इस पे इतना time लगाया. It's 8 years of your life. So
yeah, so I started in 2014.
Yep.
Got out in 2021, but I finished working on it in 2020. So it's 6 years.
6 years.
But from start to getting it in people's hands, you can say 7 years.
So walk us through that journey, because I know that the moment you started on day one, the Shailja that you were at that point and the Shailja who finished the book, they're two different people.
Absolutely. It's just the name that remains.
Yes,
दोनों का नाम शैलजा है, but you're spot on there. Like, it's been the last 10 years have been truly metamorphosing for me, truly transformative, and in exceptional ways, in enriching on levels that I cannot really even describe. Maybe I have to write another book to be able to do so. And जो उसकी enrichment है वो कई जगह बहुत ही odd moments पे आपको realize होती है. It's not like कि मैं यहाँ पे बैठी हूँ और आप कह रहे हैं कि शैलजा ने बहुत काम किया है. उस समय नहीं मुझे feel हो रही. I'm not thinking wow, I've accomplished something. It comes at strangest times, that enrichment when you're least expecting it.
Right.
So when I decided that I'm going to leave my job and work full time on it, I thought I could work from home, but that didn't work either, because घर पे आपके बहुत distractions होते हैं. And you could be a person who is more disciplined than I am, but I just couldn't operate from work. And so many factors came together. Just around that time when I finished my last day, my husband started a job at Sydney Water.
Okay.
So he got a parking in the building as well. So he was now driving to work compared to going to the city when he was going by public transport. So driving to work, and a friend of mine suggested randomly one day that there's a hot desk space in Parramatta. And that hot desk space was literally 10 minutes walk from my husband's building.
Okay.
So it all was just, like you said, probably I was manifesting all this, but it was all really lined up one after the other.
Yeah.
So we used to both leave at 8 a.m. or maybe earlier, just go with him, like carefree girl in their teenage years. I was like that kind of a girl who has no care in the world. I was just a backpack, my lunch, and all the books of Gulzar.
Right.
And off I go with Samit, my husband, and park in the building. He'll walk up through a cafe, grab a coffee. I'll grab a coffee. I'll sit there, read the newspaper, have my coffee, raise into whatever I'm gonna have. Say bye to him. Say hello to his colleagues. Sit there, आराम से newspaper पढ़ के, dreaming dreams. And then I'll walk leisurely to my hot desk around 10 बज जाता था. This is my first few weeks when I was like feeling this exceptional levels of freedom. I still long for those days.
Yeah.
Like it was just exceptional. It's just,
It's a very pure emotion.
and I was gonna, when I go to my hot desk, I was only gonna spend my days with Gulzar Saab.
Right.
That's all I was gonna do, you know. So it's a dream world that I was in, and I loved it.
Yeah.
You know, I just loved it. Just the creative community around me was also very interesting because the hot desks थे तो सब लोग डेली के लिए डेस्क ले रहे हैं तो
Yeah.
कोई थिएटर आर्टिस्ट था कोई कुछ था तो हम लोग you know एक अलग एनर्जी थी
Or people who are working on startups, etc.
yes there were some of those as well
Yeah.
so yeah that's where the book was born and that's where I was every day for 5 days in the week for 2 years.
Did it ever hit you that obviously because you left your job for this, obviously you're giving up on an income stream that was coming to you?
Yeah.
So at some point that must have been a factor that hit your mind that whatever I'm doing, is it even worth it? You know?
Yes, it did. But it didn't matter at that time. It did hit me afterwards when
Yeah.
I finished doing the draft
Yeah.
and I wanted to get back to, 9 to 5
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
That's when I realized the value of what I had left behind.
Okay.
But when I was leaving it behind, I just wanted to do this
Yes.
book, you know.
Yes.
Of course, it was a consideration. I wouldn't say it wasn't. But I think all of us will go through that moment when money will just be that.
Yes.
Money, you know,
yes.
doesn't enrich you any more than when your basic needs are met.
True.
उसके बाद आपके बैंक में क्या पैसा आ रहा है और क्या हो सकता है really do you care? No, as long as we are well fed, you know, our basic, if you go Maslow's hierarchy, you know, I always go back to that. जो base वाली चीज़ें हैं, once they are met, the safety, security and basic sustenance is
After
met.
that, all of the other things are wants rather than needs.
They are wants, and if they're not met, most of us won't care. Only I think people who have crossed the threshold to going on to the greed side, when the money becomes the primary treadmill for them, उनके बात नहीं कर रही हूँ. They are driven by money, and I think उनके लिए hierarchy में money बहुत नीचे base पे safety, security और sustenance में ही आ जाता है.
Right.
For me, that wasn't the case.
That wasn't the case.
So yeah, so that's how I was thinking that way. But there have been moments since then when I look back to my role very fondly. I have bumped into my colleagues and my boss, you know, my boss ordered a copy of the book. He's actually currently a professor in Deakin University.
Okay.
And I posted something on LinkedIn and he reached out. He said, oh, you know, I'm so proud of you. I remember you talking about this and being so passionate.
Yes.
So that life came, you know, full circle when he bought a copy.
Nice. That's very sweet.
You know, so I thought that there's so much more to our experience than
Yes.
just the 9 to 5, just the money that comes out of it. But I won't lie that I never thought about it.
Yeah,
I did.
Of course. But you have to take account of like, look, if you're trying to reach out for something, you're always invariably going to miss out on something else in life. That is how
the
life
opportunity cost.
the opportunity cost har cheez ki hai. That's how life works.
Bilkul.
But you have to understand what you want, what will, like you said, enrich you more. And I think
Absolutely.
you're better off enriching yourself with this book out.
Yeah, no regrets. No regrets whatsoever.
Okay. I'll ask you another question. Once the author's process is such that you start producing something and then you start utterly hating it, what you've produced.
Which you should. Yeah.
Because that is the only way that you're ever going to be good enough to publish it.
Yes.
And for a lot of writers, for majority of writers, I believe, even after their work is published out there, and even if they're bestsellers, good writers would always go back and say, I hate this work of mine. You know, I could have done it 100 different ways to make it 100 times better, etc., etc. Has that occurred with you?
Yeah, and that self-criticism is a constant voice that I live with. But I've also now learned to realize that voice also keeps me on toes and, you know, keeps me, you know, aspiring for, you know, doing better. So वो voice मेरे लिए बहुत ज़रूरी है. और I've started to sort of appreciate that voice now a lot more. But in terms of, you know, that criticism all the time, you know, when does it get toxic? You have to watch out for that. कि ऐसा ना हो कि आप, you know, paralyze हो जाएं.
Yes.
कि आप पेन ही नहीं उठा पा रहे.
Yes.
तो वो है. And I think इस सब की process में having a good mentor is really, really important.
Hmm.
Trusting, some people with good criticism, like
Yes.
trusting them in the sense that they will give you constructive feedback, and you being ready to take that constructive feedback without getting offended
Hmm.
is quite important.
Yes.
So I used to be, and I'm probably even now very, very protective of my work.
Hmm.
But I've realized that I'm protective of my work, but if there's someone who's uh, an authority on the subject,
Hmm.
and if they are going to criticize my work, I am all ears.
Yes.
But if there's somebody who hasn't written one, sentence in their world, and they have no idea
Yes.
what poetry, and they come forward and they
Yes.
say, okay,
Yeah.
ye kar lete, wo kar lete. So you have to be careful as to
Yeah.
whose constructive criticism you should adopt
Yeah.
and who you should ignore.
I think that point is very valid in this day and age of social media warriors. People in the comment section just
Keyword.
yeah,
Keyboard warriors.
keyboard warriors, just shouting out whatever comes
Yeah.
to their mind.
Yeah.
Especially during COVID times,
Mm.
people actually in the comment section challenging actual scientists and people who have actually done the work on the validity of the vaccine and whatnot.
Exactly. I'll tell you, a very recent thing. Like आपने कहा आपने कोरम का वो interview देखा.
Yep.
वो YouTube पे था, उसमें comments somehow कोरम had turn it off. But recently मैं वहाँ गई तो उसमें एक comment था अभी कुछ हफ्ते पहले, उसमें लिखा था, I feel so bad for this author because she spent 8 years of her life and Gulzar Saab doesn't seem to be liking this.
I saw that
this
comment.
conversation.
I saw that
And
comment.
I'm thinking, like, this is one easy comment that I can ignore.
Yeah.
Because this person doesn't know that I was sitting with Gulzar Saab 2 days before that. We
Yes.
spent 2 hours together.
Yes.
He's excited about the session that we are going to
Yes,
have. He said,
yes.
"Mujhe notes bhej do, ye karo." He was supposed to, the program was supposed to start at 5 p.m.
Yeah.
And because Gulzar Saab was there, the media got interested. So there was ZTV was going to come, Republic TV. There was somebody from radio, FM, Red Mirchi. There was somebody from ABP, Madzi.
Yeah.
So I called him. I said, sir, there's media interest. He said, don't you worry. मैं 4 बजे आ जाऊँगा. 1 घंटे हम interviews करेंगे. 5 बजे show होगा. I said,
Right.
fine, perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I was there at 3 p.m.
Yes.
Gulzar Saab was there at 3:30.
Yes.
And he came. He says, I love this club. I said, he says, कहाँ से तुमने ये ढूंढा? मुझे इतना अच्छा लग रहा है. मैं चाहता हूँ तुम और किताबें लिखो और मैं यहाँ बार-बार आऊँ. Then we went for a tour, and we met all the members of the club, and they came forth, and they were like, "Oh, Gulzar Saab, ye wo," so they were all that.
Yes.
And then we sat down, just went through the notes again, and then the whole session. And I know he was there wholeheartedly. He left. He was supposed to leave at 7 p.m. And I was really feeling bad that the session is going longer than it should because he has to leave. And, I was really worried about that. So when the session finished, which went over, I think 7 p.m. 7:30 chala.
Yeah.
So I said to him, sir, आपको अगर निकलना है तो please don't worry because अब केवल book signing होनी थी. And people were queuing up to get the book signed.
Yep.
And he said, don't worry, आप करो book sign करो. So I'm like, मेरा ध्यान पूरा गुलजार साहब है कहाँ चले गए नहीं चले गए ये वो ऐसा वगैरह देखा तो यहाँ पे वो बैठे थे मेरे कब आके बैठे मुझे पता नहीं and he's signing the book as I'm passing it on.
Wow.
So that's the cue. The next was him signing and people were like just going crazy because he's now signing the book. Then
so that's what it meant for him as well.
Exactly.
That the work that you've done, he felt affiliated to it.
He did, and that's why he said it. What goes in the back of the book is given this amazing endorsement to the book. Then 8 o'clock, we all went our way. I was having dinner with my family, and around 9:30, quarter to 10 or something, a friend messaged me saying Gulzar Saab is looking for you.
Okay.
Like, kya hua hoga? I hope, so it was around 10 o'clock, and I know 10 o'clock is too late to call him. So I tried to contact him. I couldn't. So next day मेरी सुबह उनसे बात हुई तो मैंने कहा सर आप मुझे ढूंढ रहे थे बोले हाँ मैं बस पता करना चाह रहा था कि आप वापस पहुंच गए आराम से सब अच्छा रहा आपको कैसा लगा सेशन हाउ इज योर मम फीलिंग बिकॉज माय मम वाज देयर
That's so sweet.
So I know this happened. This is my memory, and I'm sharing with you because मुझे वो कमेंट याद आया कि कीबोर्ड वॉरियर होने का ये आई फील बैड फॉर दिस पर्सन बट
person
डोंट
who has zero input
Insight into-
zero insight of what happened. You weren't even at the event. You probably
Yeah.
haven't even read the book.
watched or even watched the video
Yeah,
fully
you don't even know Gulzar Saab half as well as the author does.
exactly
So and you
So
feel obliged to comment something like that. Yeah, that's exactly it.
that was interesting so yeah
Okay. Okay, I wanted to ask you, you're someone who has traveled to Australia from India, and you know that South Asian countries, Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, we're bound by that conservatism in our society, right? You know, the rigid mentality that you have these 3 or 4 streams that you have to work into, and don't try to dwell too much, deviate away from all of this,
yes
right?
yes
So for you to come here and then explore a completely different side of yourself and to satisfy your own, your thirst to produce something like this.
something which is not in the technical engineering doctor side of things.
Not
a lot of people who think I've written a book, they think, oh, it must be about sustainability.
exactly
right?
exactly. When I first saw your LinkedIn profile and I saw that author, I like, okay, she must have written something
Yeah.
related to her field. But
that's
then I was
your,
like, but then I saw
wiring.
Gulzar Saab, I was like, now I have to have this conversation just to find out what happened there.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so my question is that there are a lot of new immigrants coming into Australia now, right? And a lot of them, not just from Pakistan or India, not just from the South Asian state, but from any other country in the world, from conservative societies, other people might have other Moonsmiths buried inside them
Absolutely.
that are just waiting to come out.
Yes.
People might have other ideas for to express themselves artistically in some way, right? So what would your advice be for somebody who's coming in here and now has the opportunity and the avenues to do something like that, but lacks the fundamental push or the fundamental drive that is required for doing something like this?
I don't know if I can really give any advice. Sometimes, you learn as you go. But with me, my husband was backing me day and night, and he still does. He's behind me, with everything. So his support is absolutely vital to this book. If you have that support,
Yes.
I want to make it a given.
Yeah.
कि अगर वो support है, फिर तो फिर what's stopping you? But
Yes.
अगर वो support नहीं है, I cannot advise anyone to say कि ये कर लो वो कर लो, because
Right.
in the end we are on our own. As I call it, the unaccustomed earth. With time, of course, we make it accustomed earth, but mostly we are on our own. Family नहीं है, support नहीं है उस
Right.
तरह का कि हम job छोड़ के घर पे बैठ जाएं.
Right.
So I really cannot comment कि क्या हो सकता है क्या नहीं, but I would definitely say one thing, that you could take it, piecemeal, in the sense that you could, if you are, say, in uni full time, you could say, okay, let me defer it for 6 months. You could try and take, a 3-month leave and
Yeah.
say, okay, let me try this out in 3
You
months.
can have a hiatus.
Yes, exactly. And, take a sabbatical from your work and say, it's my creative chutti. If you have good relationship with your boss or whatsoever, you can do that. You can try it out for 3 months and then see where you're going. It needs a kickstart. Some of these projects need a kickstart and discipline and a routine.
Yes.
And we miss that part. कि creativity हमें लगता है कि will dawn upon us.
Yes.
It needs to be commissioned sometimes. And that discipline, Gulzar Saab talks about that. कि when I asked him कि आप क्या हर दिन लिखते हैं, that was one of my questions. And he says, हलवाई हूँ, दुकान पे बैठना पड़ता है. He says, रोज ताजे लड्डू भी बनाने पड़ते हैं और दही भी काटनी पड़ती है.
That's such a great analogy.
Right. So I realized that when I took this hot desk, thinking that I need that routine.
Yeah.
And for that routine, I needed to do whatever I needed to do. So if you can't resign, you can probably take, 2 weeks or a month retreat, go somewhere in Blue Mountains.
But just get
and
started.
Just get started.
Just get started, yeah.
And that momentum will probably carry you.
Yeah.
You know,
And probably after you've invested a certain amount of time early on, you will figure out that is this for me or is this not for me?
Exactly, yes.
Yes.
And those moments of doubts will come, but you have to create some sort of support village around you.
Yes.
And that village will also, will carry you. So in my case, my husband was there, and I had some really great friends who, I could send stuff to and say, can you read this and give me your feedback. After a year or so, I got a mentor, which was Gulzar Saab, and I sent him, and he actually said, okay, call me. And I was like, oh God.
I mean, to be
That was my first
mentored by Gulzar
him, yeah.
Saab.
So that village really was important for me, but
yes.
we all have to know what that means to you in terms of creating your own village. But I can say that, if not resigning, go for a 3-month creatively
or even just start on your weekends.
Yeah, like what you've done.
What I'm doing, exactly.
Yeah.
But the support system needs to be there. Like I know that while I'm sitting here interviewing you, my wife is there handling 2 kids on her own.
Exactly.
So the support has to be there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think the other point I wanted to make on that was just the training that our societies have given us, the conditioning that, or the hardwiring that we have. The societies are deft at making us thinking beings,
Particularly South Asian societies.
Particularly
societies who have a post-colonial past, who have a colonial past.
Yes, and I think that's not just the only thing. There's, so many other elements to it. I mean, maybe population is one big element where we need to just outdo each other.
Yeah,
right?
Scarcity of resources.
Exactly. So that, crab mentality, so that hardwiring is so deep. I mean, it's almost evolutionary wiring within us, which we need to break free from, So for me, to know that there is also a feeling being within me, that, I need to go look beyond accomplishments, money, success, and all these parameters to something which will be enriching on, multiple layers that you're not even aware of, the ones that are dormant in you. In the afternoon where I thought that longing, was so dormant in me, and suddenly it came alive. And one day all of us will have those moments, right? So yeah, I think just being aware that there is so much to our experience than just the
9 to 5, just the 9 to 5. Yeah. So and that leads me to the next thing I wanted to ask you, that the need to have a passion project, the importance of having a passion project in life. It's necessary. It keeps you, your job and your everything, it sustains you.
Yeah.
But these are things that you live for.
Yeah. I mean, life is killing us every day.
One way or the other,
moment by moment, it's killing us.
Yeah.
So what can we do to keep us alive? And to not die before the actual death.
Exactly.
So that's passion.
Exactly.
Right? So there's a nazm, this is from Pukhraj, Gulzar Saab ki hai, ki sab pe aati hai, sab ki baari se, maut munsif hai, kamo besh nahi. Zindagi sab pe kyun nahi aati? So, that's what I think, your passion jo hai, wo probably zindagi hai.
Everybody lives, everybody dies, but why doesn't everybody live to their full potential, or
living and being alive?
There are two different things. Yes.
जिंदगी क्या है जानने के लिए जिंदा रहना बहुत जरूरी है. आज तक कोई भी रहा तो नहीं. So this is a Triveni. So I really love this, because this is, when he's reminding you to be alive when we are alive, and not to die a premature death before we die.
Right.
So
this gives me an iteration of this is, have you seen Dead Poets Society, the movie?
I haven't.
Right. It's somewhere along the same lines, that we are all we are born within the society with its rigidity and its inflexibility and its demands of us, and that is not our fault. We are born into it.
Oh, yeah.
But
we have to shed off those things. No?
Yes, we have to shake off those chains and learn to live for ourselves, or at least try to find that thing.
Yeah. And like we talked about opportunity cost before. So I think when I look back at, as you said, jo income thi, the income that I lost, I cannot really monetize the enrichment that I gained.
Yes.
And these are the externalities of life that we should never monetize. But we should understand that there's always externalities and enrichments to things, and we need to expand our boundaries to that enrichment rather than think within our boundaries only.
100%. So this is one question that I always ask all my guests. So based on your experience from being an engineer on the scientific and rigid side of it to being a poetic and artistic side, based on all of your experiences, what is one nugget of truth or one truth that life has revealed to you that you want to share with anybody listening?
So many, but one thing that stays with me, especially an immigrant experience as we started with, कि जब हम यहाँ आए उसके बाद हमारी struggles, journey, challenges वो हमेशा रहे. कभी आप यहाँ से वहाँ पहुँचना चाहते हैं, जब वो उस मंजिल पे पहुँच जाते हैं तो लगता है कि so अभी 4-5 साल पहले I was just reflecting on my sense of well-being or my sense of satisfaction. I thought ऐसा कुछ नहीं है कि आप एक मंजिल पे पहुँच जाएं तो suddenly you feel accomplished. So that always stays with you, that seeking, that incompleteness, that trying to get to another manzil. So something that always resonates with me is the way we spend our days is of course the way we spend our lives.
Right.
So अगर आप एक दिन में पूरे दिन खुश हैं और ऐसी हैबिट आपकी हर दिन की है,
so eventually your life will become happiness.
Exactly right. So I realized that seeking that remained with me will become my life too. So मुझे लगता है कि अगर मैं इस दिन में satisfied हूँ और कल भी, और habitually अगर आप अपने दिन बदल दें तो आपकी ज़िंदगी वही बन जाएगी जो आपका एक दिन है. So I think someone said that. Annie Dillard.
Okay.
How we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives, is what she said.
Right.
And
so it's the constant repetition and the reminder of what your values are and what you stand for and what you want to be.
Yes. How you want your life to be.
Manifestation.
Yes. But your days will have to be like that. So we can't say कि आज I was dissatisfied. कल मैं seeking थी, परसों मेरा mood खराब था, लेकिन eventually I am on a path to a satisfying journey. You can't be. So 10 साल पहले भी मेरे अंदर उतनी seeking थी जो आज है. Right? So I feel that if I have to feel satisfied and accomplished, I have to start feeling it right this minute.
Beautiful. I can't think of a better way to end the podcast on. I think if you read a few excerpts for us from the book.
So I've got one book which is Gulzar Saab poem, and I've got a book which is written by me. So this chapter is called Gulzar, the Julaha of the Libas of Relationships. So he calls libas, रिश्तों को लिबास का मेटाफोर दिया है उन्होंने एक दो नज़मों में. जैसे ये है कि मेरे कपड़ों में टंगा है तेरा खुश रंग लिबास, मेरे कपड़ों में टंगा है तेरा खुश रंग लिबास, घर पे धोता हूँ मैं हर बार उसे और सुखा कर फिर से अपने हाथों से उसे इस्त्री करता हूँ, मगर इस्त्री करने से जाती नहीं शिकने इसकी और धोने से गिले शिकवों के चिकत्ते नहीं मिटते. सो ये लिबास का जो मेटाफोर है, मैंने वहाँ से ये जुलाहा ऑफ लिबास लिया है. तो इसकी जो बिगिनिंग है मैं वो थोड़ा सा पढ़ रही हूँ. In this world there are only two tragedies. One is not getting what one wants and the other is getting it. Oscar Wilde said in a cruel and heartbreaking reflection that eloquently speaks to both the allure and the curse of love and relationships. They continue to care for each other, perhaps more, after a separation creates a chasm between two people. A legal mechanism can grant them divorce but cannot take away the residual belongingness. The law is only paper thin. It cannot pierce the inner layers of a relationship. I call it the tere bina conundrum, when it is not as simple as not being in love, where living together ceases to be an option, but living apart is equally heartbreaking. Every time I witness two people in this conundrum, I marvel at the brevity of these two lines penned in the 70s. What initiated a lifelong love with Gulzar, this song also became the centerpiece of one of my articles. तेरे बिना जिंदगी से कोई शिकवा तो नहीं, तेरे बिना जिंदगी भी लेकिन जिंदगी तो नहीं. What grants him a monopoly in portraying relationships in an unabridged manner, showing all the markings and knots of mistakes and regrets and the slow degeneration of the libas of a relationship. What grants him a monopoly?
If I ask you कि आप कोई ऐसी नज़म पढ़ें that would get any listener who is not familiar with Gulzar familiar to Gulzar, and then think about कि okay, maybe this is somebody who I need to explore.
Oh God! Again, the range is so diverse. ये वाली मैंने पढ़ी थी, मैं मेरे कपड़ों में टंगा है, वो मैं मेरी काफ़ी फेवरेट है.
Right.
अभी मैंने एक ऐसी पिक की है जिसमें आप उनकी वॉइस देखेंगे कि जब वो नेचर की बात करते हैं, लेकिन नेचर से ह्यूमन कंडीशन पे आने वाली बात है इसमें. वो बहुत खूबसूरत है और इसमें एक बहुत ही पोयंसी है. और मैंने ये जो लास्ट की 2 लाइनें हैं उनको कई रेफरेंस में अपनी किताब में शामिल किया है. बट देयर इज सो मच मोर टू गुलजार देन जस्ट दिस नज़्म. बर्फ पिघलेगी जब पहाड़ों से और वादी से कोहरा सिमटेगा, बीज अंगड़ाइयाँ लेके जागेंगे, अपनी अलसाई आंखें खोलेंगे, सब्ज़ा बह निकलेगा ढलानों पर. गौर से देखना बहारों में पिछले मौसम के भी निशान होंगे, कोपलों की उदास आंखों में आंसुओं की नमी बची होगी. I just love those 2 lines.
I can't think of a better way to end the podcast on. Thank you so much for
Thank
being
you, Sam.
on the podcast. This has been very enriching. It was a conversation that I was looking forward to for a couple of weeks, and I'm glad to say that it completely lived up to the hype.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And
Thanks.
for all of you watching, if you guys found this conversation engaging and entertaining, make sure to subscribe to our channel, leave a comment, give us some feedback, good, bad, whatever it is. If you have any other requests, kindly send them in and we'll try to work on them as soon as possible. Until then, this has been In the Gap. I have been Hussain, and I'll see you in the next one.